Welcome to the Mojo for Musicians podcast from Manny Cabo Media, where we dig deep into today's top strategies to help you take your music career to the next level with real, raw, and uplifting conversations with industry professionals that are making moves, making a difference, and making the best versions of themselves to inspire you to do the same. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Manny Cabo, and welcome to another episode of Mojo for Musicians.
All right, Mojo Maniacs, welcome back to another episode of Mojo for Musicians. And for those of you just joining me for the first time, this is the voice of the musician's motivator and the host of the show, Manny Cabo. And I want to thank you for listening in and helping Mojo for Musicians grow in the music sector because, after all, I created it for the purposes of helping my community of incredibly talented and gifted musicians to succeed above all in this crazy and ever-changing world we call the entertainment industry. So once again, thank you for being a valued listener. And today the journey continues with another great episode revolving around one of the topics that at some point or another seems to plague us in any capacity. And I don't care how passionate you are about something, which is the whole process of burning out. That's right, the fatigue factor starts kicking in. And I got an amazing host who I can't wait to ask him how he gets through that daily hustle, including selling out arenas across the country consistently, I might add, with the one and only Brad Paisley. Now, this topic couldn't be more relative, especially nowadays, where everyone seems to be scrambling and working even harder to reinvent themselves and learning new techniques, software, different sources of income, you name it. And dude, that can be mentally, physically, and even emotionally exhausting. And as a creative, it can be overwhelming, making it impossible to focus on your craft if you just simply don't have the energy. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about certain things that we can do as musicians to alleviate those stressful conditions that can preclude us from becoming the best versions of ourselves on all levels. Now, from my personal standpoint, I'm perpetually in a state of working against the clock. Like, I literally feel like there's just not enough hours in the day to get everything done. And I'm sure I'm not the only one listening out there that feels this way because, let's face it, it's not just one task. We musicians have a pretty hefty plate, from writing songs, producing songs, recording songs, setting up booking, updating all of your social media, putting shows together, and the list goes on. Plus, if you have another full-time job like myself, being a photographer and now a podcast host, that just adds to the turmoil of the scheduling. So yeah, it's pretty easy to get burned out. But the one thing I want to point out here in all of this is that the dangers come when we don't even realize that we're at the pinnacle of burning out. And that's what I want to focus this episode on. In other words, to help you realize what the signs are and how to address them when they come up, and even better, how to avoid them entirely. So, one of the first signs that you're hinging on burning out is the fact that you find it really difficult to stay focused or engaged in the activity at hand. And you find yourself focusing on things other than what's in front of you. That's happened to me multiple occasions, many more times than I'd like to admit. Or the other popular one, which I'm guilty of as well, is when someone is speaking to you and your head is completely out of the game. And my wife gets on me for that sometimes. She'll say things like, "Where are you? Because you're definitely not in this conversation." And she's completely right, but don't tell her I told you that. It's like you develop this immediate sense of ADD. And you're so easily distracted. So that's always one red flag for me. But here's the thing. It then spirals into other more severe things, like I feel the weight of the world is on my shoulder. In other words, a feeling of heaviness that comes over me, like forget about trying to work out because I just don't have enough energy to even lift up a camera or microphone or pick up a plan to write a script. Essentially, I got nothing. And just recently, I developed this case of heavy breathing, like I was having anxiety attacks. And take my word for it, guys, that's something that you don't want to go through because, quite frankly, they suck. The second sign that you're flirting with burnout is that you're resorting to extreme negative vices like drugs, alcohol, which, as we all know, over the years has been a tapestry that has taken the lives of so many artists. And I'm talking Class A artists as well, because no one is immune from feeling burned out, guys, and especially at the level of the mainstream world. Now, I'm not saying that taking a break and having a glass of wine just to unwind after a long day is not a viable option. Of course it is. And I recommend it fully. That's the whole purpose of why this episode is so important. What I'm talking about, and it's not just limited to alcohol, if you're sitting in front of your TV, binge watching show after show, or excessively smoking weed and having 4 glasses instead of 1 to avoid the responsibilities of doing the work, then yeah, we got a problem. See what I'm getting at? Of course, the body needs leisure and a time for recreational activities. I've always been an advocate of that. And you have to celebrate those small victories, even if that means to have a beer or a cigarette to relax. But it's like anything else. When you do things that are not in moderation, it's going to inevitably bite you in the ass. And it becomes a recipe for disaster. And finally, I left the worst one for last, and that is the inability to sleep. And that comes in many forms. You have the tossing and turning because you're going into these rabbit holes of questions and concerns, or you keep waking up multiple times throughout the night. Or I know this has happened to a lot of us. You're too tired to fall asleep. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but it's like your body hurts and it's just feeling numb, that it's almost uncomfortable to try to fall asleep, if that makes any sense. And again, guys, I can't stress it enough, because for me, in every creative capacity, whether I was doing a photo shoot or performing on stage or even preparing one of these podcast episodes, the first thing all professionals tell you in order to have a successful venture in whatever your creative pursuits are is to make sure you rest your body. People, you gotta sleep. If you don't sleep, you get sick. If you get sick, then you're useless to yourself and anybody that you're either trying to help, assist, motivate, or inspire. Pick one. And I can't make it any more clear than that. So I'm going to share with you a couple of techniques that I have implemented over the years to help you avoid that burnout phase, now that you know the signs and symptoms. Now, the first one on top of the list, if the conditions and the finances permit, of course, is to take an immediate vacation. And I don't care whether it's down the shore or mountain climbing, spending a few days at a bed and breakfast, whatever. Just something that has nothing to do with music, just so you could change the atmosphere and all the ambience. The next tip that has certainly been at the summit of my salvation was to become more compartmentalized in my daily duties. So what the hell does that mean? Well, simple enough: to create a daily schedule. For example, Mondays are my photography day, where I'll do all of my editing, post-production, and nothing but photography. Tuesdays will be my podcast day, everything and anything that has to do with my podcast. I do that day, whether it's writing a script, recording an episode. And then on another day, I do all of my music responsibilities, whether it's writing lyrics, recording in the studio. Now, here's the only caveat. You have to stick to that schedule because A, it's a great way to break up the monotony, and it also gives you a state of feeling organized. And believe it or not, you accomplish so much more because you don't feel scatterbrained. And trust me, you do feel organized. Now, again, you could organize your schedule whichever way you want. Now, I have 2 other careers, so it has certainly helped me. But if music is your only gig, then let's say you're a guitar player. So day 1, you do all your practicing skills, whatever the case may be. And Tuesday, you do all your songwriting. And Wednesday, maybe you do your live performances. And Thursday, you can do all your promo work for social media, and so on and so on. Again, this is just a schedule to organize your career as an artist. Believe me, it goes a long way. And you're going to notice that you miraculously have time left over. And perhaps maybe now you could use Friday or one of the other days of the weekend to just do you, which means do nothing and doing it slowly. That's some fun right there, man. Some sort of other creative outlet altogether. And then in future weeks, change up the schedule to the point where you're eating lunch at a different time, just to break up, again, that quote unquote monotony. Finally, guys, and most importantly, take time to, that's right, breathe and live in the moment and be grateful for all the things that you currently have. Because when you live in the attitude of gratitude, it's a gateway to gaining more of the things that you desire. So just be patient. And again, I want to remind you to reward yourself for the little accomplishments, whether it's finishing half a song or coming up with that chorus or learning those 2 songs for your next live performance, or even setting up a date for your performance. All of these are small victories that you must celebrate to give you a sense of accomplishment. And I can't stress enough, it's all these little victories that help you become a, here's the key word, consistent winner. And when I come back, we're going to talk to someone who knows firsthand what the demanding schedules of being on the road day in and day out for months at a time can do to one's health if we don't learn to create balance with our talents. That's cool. I got to trademark that. Balance with our talents. So stick around, guys. Another fun one is coming your way.
You're listening to the Mojo for Musicians podcast. To learn more about becoming a guest on the show to share your mojo with us, visit mannycabo.com and send us an email in the contact section. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, be sure to give us a positive review on your favorite listening platform. And now, back to the show.
All right, welcome back, Mojo Maniacs. And have I got another great guest waiting on the other line who has certainly created an impressive, extensive, and above all, consistent resume for himself, who's in his 20th, yeah, that's right, 20th year with Brad Paisley, playing on over 20 number 1 hits. He's a multiple Grammy award-winning drummer, and you've also seen him just killing those skins with the likes of Keith Urban, Taylor Swift, Carrie Underwood, the Black Crowes, and the list goes on. But what I love most about Ben and keeping up and following his career over the past few years is that he's always in this a severe state of self-improvement and never resting on his laurels. And he's also endorsed by some of the biggest names in music gear like Sabian Cymbals, Ludwig Drums. And this is cool because he's a huge Buddy Rich fan, so I got a story to share about that. And originally, this is cool too, he's originally an East Coast boy out of Queens, New York, who now resides obviously in Music City, Nashville. And also, check this out, this is something that's cool about him. He's a lover of the culinary arts, and I know he's got a couple of cool posts that he loves to share with the world. So let's welcome to the show the incredible talents of Ben Sesar. What's going on, Ben? And welcome to the show, brother.
All right. What's happening? Hello.
I know that's a lot of fanfare, bro, but that's your fault. All right.
All right. Yeah. I'm low profile. I'm sort of.
Yeah, of course, man.
But I appreciate it. I appreciate being here. I appreciate the chance to talk and just shoot the breeze, man.
No, this has been a long time coming. I got to tell you, it's so good to have you with us, man. And I can't tell you how humbled I am to have you and your talents on the show and sharing your journeys with all my listeners, bro, because you are basically upholding a career that only a small percentage of us have been fortunate enough to live and that many strive for, and also use what you've accomplished as an impetus to keep their dreams alive, because consistency and the longevity that you've had is just remarkable, man. But then again, your work ethic, it doesn't surprise me one bit, because unfortunately for those of you listening out there, the revolving narrative is that people want to be famous, but nobody wants to do the work, and nobody knows what it takes behind the scenes and all the things that you do when nobody's watching, because granted, you play arenas sold out here and there, but people don't realize, the blisters and the cursing and the late nights practicing in those solo rooms and getting yelled at, try to keep the noise down, and what you've been able to accomplish. So kudos to you, bro.
Well, thanks.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It really is. So thanks for being with us today. And I'm sure it's going to be a fun-filled episode. I've got some great questions for you,
all right,
which I know you're going to delve deep into the world of Ben
Right.
Sesar.
We may only get to 2 of them. So, because I talk a lot. So
No. Hey, listen, it's all good, man. The more, the merrier. I'll try to narrow them down. But they're very strategic, and I catered directly to you and your background,
All right.
So,
all right.
It's funny, but in reading about you over the years, I know you're a big Buddy Rich fan. I got a cool story. I met Buddy Rich when I was young, and I tell you what, I didn't even know enough to know what to ask, what to do. I didn't even know what the hell a paradiddle was. And all I saw was this guy in front of me who manipulated those sticks like I've never seen. It was really awe-inspiring. It truly was. Like what he can do with one hand, it's like I couldn't do it four hands. You know, it's unbelievable. Yeah. I don't have to tell you. And you got that traditional grip, which is really cool to see. Still killing it, man.
Well, thanks. I met Buddy too. Though it was after a performance. I was 17.
Wow.
So that was 1987. It was the year he died, actually.
Yeah.
And he was playing not too far from where I live, and a buddy of mine he had a meet and greet. He was a guitar player, and they gave meet and greets to everyone who helped set up the band, because they used local kids to help set up everything.
Oh, that's cool.
And he got a meet and greet, and he didn't care to have it, so he gave it to me. And it was very quick. I mean, I went up there. I had no idea what to say. Like you, I was just like, you know.
Yeah. What do you say to that, especially at our age? You know what I'm saying?
Well, even as a 17-year-old, I was mature enough to know that maybe I shouldn't say anything, except, you know, thanks. And that's about what I said. That's what I said. I said, just thanks. And but what I did was I noticed, I kind of took everything in.
Right.
I'm a 5 on the Enneagram, which means I'm a data collector, and that's exactly what I do. I take in everything. I don't really participate much except from an observing, and I observed everything. We were on his bus, and I looked at his hands, of course. Well, and also we shook hands, and I've never seen hands like, not only have I never heard hands like this, but I've never seen hands like his. This guy had huge bear size.
He had like mitts.
it like engulfed my little, it completely just swallowed up my hand. And I remember the visceral feeling of that, going, good God.
Yeah.
You know, and so he had a lot of, there's a lot of transference happens when you shake somebody's hands in terms of energy.
Right.
And he just had a powerful, he didn't like squeeze my hand really hard. It wasn't anything like, he didn't have to assert it. It was just there.
Right.
And he was a powerful human being.
He had some conviction when he showed. He's like telling you, listen, man, you better take this moment and just take it all in, because you have no idea.
Yeah. He just had that thing that we hear and see in his drumming.
Yeah.
It didn't leave him when he left the stage. He was that.
He certainly carried that X factor with him everywhere that he went.
Yeah.
No matter. I mean, even in the black and white videos that you see, I mean, he was a god behind the skins. You really can't call him anything else. He truly was.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's almost redundant, or cliche at the point to just say how great he was, but still he was.
Well, no, he definitely he paved the way for so many drummers, and surely, I mean, there's 3 drummers already that I've interviewed on the show who pay a lot of homage to him. He's just one of those icons that, he's bleeded into everyone's rudiments at some point along their journey,
Well, and I'll say this, and I'll sort of end my part of it on this note. As a kid listening to him, and even as an adult, I had no real plans or goals of ever sounding or ever being like Buddy Rich, because I was into a whole different kind of music. I knew that I might take a few inflections or things here and there, and or nod my hat to it, but I knew I would never sound or be like that. But the one thing I did try to take from him was sort of his aggressive, forward, sort of in your face attitude about approaching the instrument, and just apply that to whatever it is I do. You know what I mean? There's a little piece of that ugliness that he kind of, because his drumming is it's sort of punk rock for that kind of music. It was very edgy and kind of like rebellious kind of nature to it. And so that was the one thing that if I took any influence, it was just that attitude, the approach of just, when I sit on the drums, even if I'm going to play brushes, even if I'm playing quietly and tenderly, I'm going to eat your face off while I do it.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
It's
like, it's not just sheer it's a matter of intent. You know, a guy like that was just very, very, very intent and purposeful and meaningful when he played. So I feel like that rubbed off on me. And a lot of my influences had that where, you know, they didn't just dial it in, you know,
no, I hear you.
So if you're going to do it with everything.
Right.
And so, you know, live or die by it, but do it all the way.
Yeah, and you mentioned drummers like, you know, John Bonham, and you talk about the Neil Pearts. They all had their signature vibe, you know, and it's so true. Like they had something that they just left to all of us, you know. And for me, Neil Peart left his technicality, and he was so timid, never spoke, which is so awkward to see that discrepancy in attitude, but then he just completely showed off that attitude on the Skins. And then John Bonham just laid back. He was always in the pocket. You know, he was always like a second behind the bass. He had that great, you know, and I just loved listening to him. But listen, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the format of the show, and it's pretty straightforward, my man. So
all right.
I've created a few questions for you, and this episode revolves around the topic of beating away the burnout phase. And yes, it's a full pun intended, because what better person to talk to than somebody who's been on the road practically all his life? So I want to pose my first question, which is this, like, what was it like before you got, quote unquote, you know, discovered? In other words, you've always been somebody with a pretty adamant work ethic. So how did you maintain that intensity without burning out early on?
Who said I didn't burn out? I burned out constantly. I mean, you just have to fold burning out into the process.
Explain, because that's actually good material right there. And of course, you know, I'm just being the devil's advocate here, but I know you knew how to handle it, evidently, based on your 20-year career. But explain, what was your process?
It was different because there's different seasons. And I'm sure if you get to be my age or close to it, you can go back and look at chapters or phases in your life that had different seasons, even though it's all one long moment. So the reason why I say that is because it was different in different seasons. So if I start with, let's start with just high school. I didn't practice like wood shedding. I really didn't know. What I did was I played a lot. And I listened to a lot of music. I approached music as a fan, and then the drumming was a conduit to sort of live out my fan fantasies.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I was just trying to emulate all the music I loved, and I did it in a musical context with people. I was in bands. Every bit of music we played was epic. So our rehearsals were like these great events, you know, and a lot of it was improvisational in nature. So there was always experimentation. I was never in a cover band growing up. We just rocked out. So in that stage, my process was just playing with people and experimentation and musically, just as a young kid. So with sounds and rhythm and anything I could, based on the things I was listening to at the time. Then the next phase of that was in college. That's when I learned about wood shedding. That's what you did. And I was like, oh, whoa, okay, wow, everyone's really practicing, and it made sense because most of the people there were way better than me.
Okay.
You know, technically. I'm not behind in the passion and discovery in the creative zone, but I'm behind technically and in other ways, you know, and stylistically. And I had rudiments. I mean, I was in marching band for 4 years. I definitely practiced, you know, those things that got your hands going. I had hands, but in terms of independence, you know, jazz independence, beat displacement, real foot technique, putting it all together, deeper levels of improvisation based on themes and melodies, melodic interpretation, that kind of thing. Sure. Like, whoa, okay. So then in that phase, I went nuts. I was like, okay, this is okay. And now I have the time, and now my focus is towards that. So I practiced. I was the guy that practiced 8 hours a day when I could, between full-time classes. And I had a job too. I worked during that. So, I mean, I was in bands. I mean, I slept and then worked. And so I was constantly going, but I was heavily into practice. So that's where I learned a sort of a foundation and how to partition my time. And okay, you got to, it's better to work on one thing to mastery than to learn 7 things kind of half-assed.
That's what I was leaning at, because there's got to be a process, because, I see it all the time. So many musicians out there early on, and even currently, you get burned out. Listen, I get it. You want to master your craft, but anything that's not in moderation from the get-go, it's just going to be detrimental, because that's the fast pace to just dying out. And then you begin hating the craft, and
Right.
you realize, man, this is, you know what I'm saying? So you're basically going against all the, go ahead.
Here's how you alleviate that.
Yeah.
Here's how you alleviate hating it. I learned this much later, but so mastering, if you talk about mastery,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a harmonious blend of preparation.
Right.
So whatever you do in the practice room or whatever, not on the stage. And then you have to, the other thing you're blending with that is application.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a musical reason for what you're doing. So you can't, in other words, you're not going to get there just in the practice room.
Sure.
You have to apply whatever you're doing. Your practice should be based on some type of purpose that you have outside of the practice room.
Gotcha.
I mean, it makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Sure.
You can become a master at practicing, as you see that a lot, actually. It depends on what your goal is. I mean, my goal, remember, we didn't have Instagram or any of that. Hell, we didn't have it till I was 40. You know what I'm saying? I was 40 years old when Instagram came out, and I'm 50 now. So there wasn't a platform to just be in your room and film it. What are you kidding me?
Yeah,
that wasn't.
It was unheard of.
You had your goal for practice was to be good at playing in a musical situation with other humans.
Right.
I didn't realize it at the time, like at Berkeley, but that's what I was doing. Most of my practice was based loosely on things that I wanted to do outside of the people I was playing with. Because in my mind, in the future, I was going to be playing this. So I wanted to be prepared. But I still played the records. I everything I practiced was eventually going to end up in my coat of many colors to play.
Your little arsenal of tricks, of course. Yeah.
Right. And so with the end goal of accompanying a band.
Sure.
And so that makes it simple, right? So, but if you're just practicing to practice and you don't have an application for it, then it gets frustrating because, well, your practice can become separate from that too. Like a lot of people will practice things and then they'll try to memorize what they're practicing and then they'll try to use it in a context with people and it'll fall apart and it's happened
to me, man. I got to tell you, I've tried it.
Yeah.
You try to transfer it into a real life situation. You're like, well, yeah, this is not working.
There's a gift to that. And I'm not sure I'm the epitome of the demonstration of that to some degree, but there are people out there who seamlessly blend their practice to their musical application. Mm-hmm. Like they just keep, it's like interest. It keeps compounding. Mm-hmm. It keeps getting like, I've always been in the middle of that where I've gotten lost a few times where the things I was practicing weren't applying or, but then I'd get on the right path. And my road has been sort of bumpy with that, not to present day. So we're going in the phases, right? In the seasons of this question. So then there was a moment before I landed the gig with Brad. Let's say when I moved to Nashville after college, it took another form, really diving into time. So this was because we were starting to record. And obviously recording is the best teacher. And I wasn't recording myself practicing, but we were recording our performances. We were going in the studio. So now I'm in the studio. I'm under the microscope, right?
Totally different vibe,
man.
So
now I'm like, ooh, I'm not liking these little fluctuations I'm hearing. I'm not liking, I'm wanting the time to feel a certain way, because I'm in Nashville and
Sure.
everything's about time.
Of course.
And I mean, everything is always about time, but I just assumed in my earlier phases that, yeah, my time's fine.
Yeah.
I just didn't scrutinize it. Well, I started to scrutinize it. And I got into a really tight bundle about that because there weren't, you can learn rudiments from books. You can learn coordination, independence from books, but there was no like, well, how do you make your time? What's that? How do you reverse engineer time?
Click track. What are you talking about?
Well, even playing with the click track wasn't enough because, again, I was a master at it in my practice room. But once I got out with people pulling me and pushing me all over the place,
sure.
It was like, whoa, this is hard, and it wasn't. Because even with the click track, you just because you're with it doesn't mean you're with it. Like, it's a very complicated experience. So
yeah, it becomes robotic. Not to cut you off, it becomes robotic instead of the feel of the timing. No, I get it from that standpoint.
Of course. Well, and that's the thing. I didn't want it to be robotic. I wanted to sound like me. I wanted it to sound like the time I had in my head.
Right.
And so there was the crux. It wasn't sounding like I expected it to. So, God, I used to come up with all these exercises. Here's one I did. I drove myself nuts. It probably helped me ultimately. But I know a lot of people do something like this now where you can set a loop to be like 4 bars of click and then 4 bars of silence.
Okay.
Right. And then you in the 4 bars of silence, you keep time and then you see how you did. Did you come in with the click? Is your internal pulse going with the right? And then what I would do though, I took this to a whole other level. I would
indulge me, bro. I'm sitting back here.
This is nuts. So I would say, okay, I would create a pattern, 4 bars of click, 4 bars of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would call that a 4-bar pattern. And then what I would do is I would do it 100 times. I would just let it loop for 100, however long it took me to do 100. And then I would keep statistics. So if I came back with the click 70 times and 30 times I missed it, that was a 30% average.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I'd do it again the next day and the next day, 100 times, the next day. And to try to get the average down.
Sure.
To where I was coming in with the click, 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's pretty intense, man.
And then, no, it didn't end there. And then once I got to an acceptable percentage,
right,
I would widen the amount of silence. I would widen the silence to 8 bars.
Yeah, it's even more difficult, it seems.
Right, I make it. It's like lifting weights. You're just adding a plate to the bar.
Yeah.
Right, you're adding the resistance to it. So, all right, so the 8 bars, and I do that 100 times and see what my percentage was of accuracy. And then I kept a journal. I might even still have it somewhere. So that's like.
That's dedication right there to another degree. But I'm sure after all the analytics were over and you tallied up your results, I mean, it certainly had to help you because that's a pretty intense regimen right there just to measure your time, and it's got to help.
It definitely helps. It helped you're building that muscle of inner awareness.
Yes, exactly.
And that's all it is.
Yes.
And it is. Your time is a muscle, just like your hands or anything else. You have to put it under stress in order for it to grow. So it's literally the same thing. So that was one way. That wasn't the only way I dealt with it.
But I mean, those are the things that to add to that, it's a testament to your work ethic again, because those are the little things for those of you listening out there, not just a drummer, but for a guitar player, for a singer doing, singing scales, playing frets, whatever. These are the little things that you have to implement, or better yet, you have to invent to better yourselves, because sometimes the answers aren't readily available. You got to figure this stuff out, and the only way to figure it out is you got to put it to the test. I mean, I wouldn't think to do what you did.
There was no information at the time.
Right,
there was just zero information.
There's no immediate gratification back then. Yeah.
Right. There was just luck. You either had good time or you didn't. And I just
Exactly.
didn't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I was like, no. Here's the real story is this, though. What made it all come together was just experience, was just like playing so much and being aware of. By the way, you're for drummers, since we have 4 limbs going and we have to deal with posture and we have to deal with pedals and springs, and our body, our movement can make our time screwed up. So in other words, you might hear the time perfectly in your head. You might be able to sing. If you can sing time, right? If you can sing it out loud, then you've got it internally. So what may be holding you back, and I learned this too, was your body may be slowing you down. If you've got to reach too far for a cymbal, or if you're struggling a little with the pedals, those beats will be delayed. You need everything to hit exactly when your mind wants it to.
That makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
With no delay.
Sure.
And so that was my tendency, was a lot of people, their tendency was to sort of rush or speed up. Mine was not to slow down, but beats would be delayed within the time itself. Like a note would drag or something was behind the click. Like, and so I was fighting my body.
Gotcha.
And so I started working on just movement, like a martial artist kind of, just my body movement and things like that. And that then it aligned right up with my inner sense of time, because my inner sense of time was really good, and I feel like it still is, Right. But I'm not a gifted athlete, I'm not like some people have that gift where movement is just nothing, they go into sports or even drumming, or you know what I mean, like their
I know
movement.
them. I know a few of them. I know.
They just know how to move, right?
Yeah,
And I've always struggled with that. I'm clumsy. My body and my whatever else is in there just doesn't quite align right. You know what I mean? It's just movement even walking is hard sometimes.
Well, I got to tell you, behind the kit, man, that coordination is just at its zenith. You could even tell when you're sitting behind the kids. Yeah, man. No, dude,
I've had to work on it though. It's
exactly.
Not, that's not my natural gift is physical movement. So I've had to work on that.
So let me go back to the actual,
yeah.
How did you not burn out? I mean, granted you did, but how did you deal with it? Like, what did you do to, I don't know, vacate yourself from the burnout process? Let's just leave it at that.
Here's what, in some of those phases, I didn't, I burned out to the point where the natural laws of burning out took over. And I had to stop for a second. Right. You know what I mean? I had to take breaks because I couldn't just push forward. I couldn't push through it. And, some things around you will collapse or start to not work. Like my life just wasn't working. I wasn't happy. I was frustrated. I was, you know what I mean? And just and ignoring other aspects of life that could be giving me peace. So
absolutely.
And that peace is what actually revives you to go back in, roll your sleeves up. And so anytime I got to a burnout phase, I ended up taking a step back. I'm kind of in a period like that now.
Interesting.
But it's a long period. I'm taking
the extended vacation.
I'm taking a whole season of life. But not from being passionate about music, but from just the grind of being down in the dungeon.
No, I get you.
So another thing I suffer from is attention deficit.
Okay.
And it's gotten worse as I got older. So what happens is I can be very, very, very focused for a short period of time, and then I just absolutely fall asleep. I mean, I can't even do it. Like after about an hour, if I'm practicing now, I have about an hour before I just can't bear it. But for that hour, I'm very, very focused.
Sure.
So there's another lesson in there. It actually doesn't matter how long you do something. It matters how long you consistently do something.
That's a good point. Yeah.
If you only had and this is absolutely true, and this is an extreme example, so but it'll make the point. If you only had 7 minutes a week to practice,
Right.
it would be better for you to go hard for 1 minute a day than to just do the whole 7 minutes in one sitting.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. You got to commit
It,
wholeheartedly.
it's frequency
Mm-hmm.
and intensity, not time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're one of those people, again, it's a gift, and some people have it. If you can focus, if you can be down there for however many hours and still stay focused, then all the power to you.
Yeah.
But I learned about myself that literally, if I try to sit down there for 5 hours now, well, I'm just wasting about 4 hours of time because I cannot stay engaged. So if I'm in a routine, but whatever I'm doing, I'll do it every day. So there's the thing. If you're doing it every day, you're reinforcing that the mind body connection that is so necessary to play any instrument,
Sure,
or any,
sure.
and if you just do it a little bit each day, you're good.
Yeah, because I actually preface every episode, not to interject prematurely, but
Okay.
I always preface every episode, and that's one of the things that I talk about. And again, I'm trying to I was poking at you because somebody who deals with the day in and day out turmoil, having to play and recording live sessions, and then being live, and then on the road again, and then practicing your rudiments. So that takes a huge toll on just your way of life. So I prefaced a couple things that you need to do. You got to take, like you said, take a step back. You need to walk away for a little bit, sometimes an extended period, because again, what you focused on just now is so vitally important. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's true. You're better off going, like you said, a certain amount of time consistently, full force, than going haphazardly, sporadically for an hour just to say that you practice for an hour. It's just futile, no
Right.
waste of time. Absolutely, I agree with you. And with that,
Yeah.
you don't mind, I'm gonna make a segue into question
Do
number
it.
3, which I think is a pretty valuable one here, to use that word, because question 3 has to be with the 3 most valuable lessons that that you learned over the course of your musical career that you can share with my music community that can help them stay aligned on that path of success. If you can't think of 3, then I'd rather you give me one good one. But if you got a good 3, a solid
Yeah.
3 that you could share with us, it's vital, because
Yeah.
I want to ask individuals like yourselves with that longevity, because it's crucial. Because if you've built a career out of a certain amount of years, and between those 20
Yeah.
years, there's so many lessons, and we're still learning. I love to be a sponge. I'm
Yeah.
like you, man. I love learning, and that's why I can teach so much, because I think I'm a better student. So what have you learned over the course of that time that could at least ease those hardships or help sidestep my listeners?
So I'm a person that I like the simplest, or I believe in the simplest explanations for things. So I'm gonna, if another, I don't have everything all figured out, like in lists, like, all right, the 3 top, like a Mount Rushmore of top things, but I do, I have, but they're there. I just don't think about them
Right.
all the time. But there's one in particular. There's one that I've always lived by, and I think this has worked for me.
Okay.
It might not work for anyone else, but it's worked for me. You have to love something. You have to love what you're doing so much that you're willing to be unsuccessful at it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I agree.
And if you get that, some people will go, "What?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean be unsuccessful? Oh, it's about success." And it's like, well, what is success then? You know what I mean? It's like, and remember, the word love is in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and so that came by naturally to me. I stopped thinking about traditional success and fame and those superficial kind of things, but at the age of like 17,
Mm-hmm.
I think I stopped thinking about those kind of things.
Wow.
Maybe a little later than that. But what I did notice from day one was that I just loved music so much that overweighed any of the other sort of superficial. Now, yes, in one compartment in my mind, of course, I had dreams, But this whole like, well, I'm just a dreamer. Well, no, I am, but only in the context of I'm a doer.
Sure.
So, and that the whole process is fueled by, for me, was just love of it. I loved it. And it didn't even start with drumming. It started with just being a fan of music. Like, remember why you're playing music in the first place. Like, for me, I just loved music so much that it wasn't enough for me to just listen to it. I wanted to know what it was like to be in it, to be inside of it, like, right, in music, not in the music business per se, but just in music. That was my motivating factor, was just I loved it so much that I couldn't contain myself anymore as just a listener. And that's just it. And it started when I was a child. It started when I was 4 years old. I wasn't a passive music fan. I was a very involved listening, and that was fueled by my older brothers. They were into it. And so anything they did, I wanted to do, because I was the little brother.
The bug bit you early, man.
and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Standing on the sidelines, being a fan, like that wasn't enough for me.
Sure. And
so I was bit by the bug. So I've always had that. And when I play to this day, I mean, even if I pick up the sticks, the minute I pick up the sticks to do anything, I'm sort of transformed back to that child.
Yeah.
And who just loves it. And I don't know, that could be a lucky thing. So I didn't do it to for likes,
Yeah, no, of course.
That didn't exist, and I've just said to myself, I'll keep doing that until I don't feel like doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And as of now, I still feel like doing it.
Well, you know what? You remind me, it is, because passion is certainly a byproduct, and it's just a precursor to success. And I learned that from Steve Jobs. It's funny you remind me of Steve Jobs. Sometimes,
absolutely,
and he said, listen, you have to do something that you love, because you're always going to have that little monkey on your shoulder telling you to quit. And if you could get past that tendency, or that entertaining that nudge to quit, then you've realized that you're doing something that you should be doing. So, and for most people, they don't understand that. Well, you have to be doing something that you're completely passionate about, because you have to understand that there's a very limited few, a tiny percentage of people that actually become successful as a career in music. And and it's so true. It's kind of scary. And I remember my first drum teacher told me, listen, if you keep playing drums after what I'm going to tell you, then you deserve to be in music. You have a higher percentage of never making it anywhere in music, right?
Yeah.
Than any other industry. Do you still
I knew
want to
that
play
at
drums?
12.
Yeah, see?
I knew that at 12 years old.
That's great. See, and that's what helped you. And then you knew, because once you could accept that truth and you're still willing to take that risk, then you know you're on the right path. And passion is definitely, like I said, it's a byproduct and a precursor to success. You have to have it.
Well, and it's not even a risk. I mean, I suppose, but some of that goes down to I guess it would be easy for some of your listeners to go, well, that's easy for you to say, you made it work and all this stuff. But that's legitimate. Before I met Brad, and I was working 12 hours a day in restaurants, and I had a nighttime gig with my buddies, and we were I was happy.
Mm-hmm.
I was a happy person. I wasn't, and this, what some people do is they remain miserable people until they hit that almost impossible goal. They make a deal with themselves, kind of like the devil, and they go, well, I'm only going to be happy if I achieve this almost impossible to reach goal of what I call success. And then if I reach that, well, then I'll be happy in my life. So it has to do with the deal you make with yourself. So at let's say 25 years old, when I was struggling, I was struggling, but I wasn't miserable about it because I was playing music. I was playing music all the time. I was living in Nashville. I had a girl at the time. We were happy. There were other. I was in the process of making and enjoying music and also having a life here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't place value on just in terms of my own happiness, solely on quote unquote success in the music business. Yes, it was something I was working on, but I was very content. If nothing had ever happened, you know, in a large scale, I would still be playing music, and I would still be pushing the boundaries. And who knows, I might be pushing them more than I am now.
I think we all are. I know I am.
So you've got to ask yourself why you're when someone's, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I love music. Well, really ask yourself with grace, like, what is it you love? And there's no wrong answer. If you truly love being the way that music is a catalyst for attention in the outside world, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's a different thing. And just, you can pursue that. Or if you love it for what I would call superficial reasons, I'm not really putting a negative spin on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's total, like, you know what I mean? It's okay. But just know where you are.
Sure. I think you have to set realistic expectations. There's nothing wrong with striving for goals, but you have to have quantifiable goals and realistic expectations, because the problem is most of us put unnecessary pressure on ourselves instead of realizing, listen, I just want to enjoy the journey, love what I do, you know, and let's see where this journey takes me, but have a backup plan, perhaps, take your breaks, still be adamant about your passions, of course, but set reasonable and realistic expectations, you know, and we have to accept the fact that in this industry, it's like, because I played professional sports, and there's only a limited few that actually get to the big show, and that's okay. You can have a very successful career in the minors, you know, you could have a very successful career in college or being a coach. There's so many different facets in the music industry, which is a great thing. And we had an episode on that. You could be a teacher, you could be a session individual. It's just how you measure success. Everyone has a different measure of success. And you're right. You hit the nail on the head.
All right. So here's a number 2 of your top 3 questions.
Okay.
That came, again, this is something I think about all the time. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't have it in list form, but I knew it would pop out if we kept going down this rabbit hole.
Hit me.
And it does relate to number 1. Know your gifts.
Okay.
Know what you're gifted at. Because we're all gifted at something. And for example, drummers, let's just say, their gift is math.
Okay.
And then, like, literally, they're mathematical geniuses, and somehow they've turned that into craziness on the drums, and that's really their gift. Like, take like Vinny Colaiuta, right? Mm-hmm. He's a math whiz. Okay. Someone's gifts may be extrovertedness. You have natural energy.
Okay.
Natural energy. You can go out into a crowd and hang and network and meet people and never get tired and never hate it and just love it so much it just feeds you, right? Those are examples of gifts, and it doesn't necessarily mean these are very specific gifts. So it's not like when we say, oh, so and so they're just gifted. Well, what are the gifts? What are the things you're really good at? And they don't necessarily have to be musical. Again, you could have a long attention span. Mm-hmm. That can help you. Wherever you are, take inventory of what those really specific strengths are,
and capitalize off of them. Right.
And then also notice your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And don't try to force feed those things. Like, I'm not an extrovert by any means. I'm terrible at, like, networking. Now, I can be your friend, like, genuinely, but I can't act like I like you if I don't. You know, I just don't.
No false facades here, man. Sure,
and
I got you.
It's terrible because it goes against all the advice, right?
Of course.
Got to be out there, but I know I can't do that, and I've known I couldn't do it, so I never did it.
Right.
And things still worked out because I leaned into my other gifts.
I get it.
I can genuinely like somebody, or I can genuinely not. Mm-hmm. And I just gravitated towards those I can be genuine with, and those people appreciated that. And that was sort of how I accidentally networked. I didn't purposely try to network. I just bonded with those who I bonded with and let the other people fly. I can't walk into a room and do the numbers game.
Yeah, no,
If you're gifted in that way, by all means, I totally support that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. There's no wrong or right. There's only wrong or right based on what you can and cannot do. I learned, now this is more specific to music. In college, they were really trying to cram jazz down our throats.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved listening to jazz, but I didn't intellectually understand where it was going. It was too over my head. I couldn't understand what was trying to be said. Again, it sounded cool, and I loved listening to it. It felt like there was a lot of freedom in it, and I love freedom. But there was something about that music at the time.
I just couldn't compute.
I couldn't identify with it on a fan level. So I ignored it.
It's an acquired taste. Listen, jazz is cool, you know, if it's ambience, but it's an acquired taste, especially as a player, because I'm just visualizing it. Go ahead.
Well, but then what happened was, as I got a little older and my ears grew,
Mm-hmm.
I started to hear it. You know, I started to hear the purpose and the intent and the phrasing and the melodic aspects, and I could hear it differently because I grew up. And then I had my sort of light bulb moment where it was like, aha, I get it.
Yeah,
but
right.
the point is, the point of that is, at the time, I didn't try to, even though everyone was saying, well, you got to know all these styles,
Yeah.
right? You got to know all this because you want to work. And I'm like, yeah, I want to work, but I can't force feed something that I just don't have a home for. Because I'll never be able to play it convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never be able to play it like someone who grew up with it. So let those guys do it.
Yeah,
You know, only play the styles that you love. Don't try to, I mean, maybe force feed, maybe make yourself listen to stuff and see if it'll assimilate. But if you can't assimilate it, you don't have to force. It's better to spend the time leaning into the things you do have a home for. You know what I mean?
Agree.
And
I
so,
agree.
and so that's all I'm saying. Like, just sit back and go, well, this is what I'm good at. This is what I have aptitude for. This is what gets me going, and just double down on those things, and then keep an open mind on the other stuff. Right. I'm not saying to close out, but, you know, again, because you'll go through phases, and one day you'll like broccoli.
Of course.
And you didn't when you were 7. You know what I mean? It's like that.
No, it
and
makes
so,
perfect sense. Yeah.
So that would be the number 2, would be to just know what your gifts are. And by gifts, it's aptitudes.
I tell you what, man, those two are extremely valuable, because I really want to get to my last question, which is usually my trademark question. But if you have a quick one for 3, give it to me, man.
No, that's it. I'm just going with the flow.
Those are 2 were amazing, man. And it's true. And again, guys, everyone listening, passion, passion, passion. You know, just like Ben said, you're better off focusing on what you truly love and really going full force than half-assing something totally that you're really not interested, just so you could add an extra bullet in your belt. It never made sense to me either. As a photographer, listen, I chose music photography and editorial. That's what I love. I could have done underwater photography. I could have done landscapes, but it's not my thing, man. I love music photography, and that's what I'm sticking with, you know? So I completely get it.
And then your personal, don't forget your personal aptitudes.
Sure.
Like, are you shy? Are you extroverted? Right. Are you good at discipline? Are you bad at discipline but good with figuring out solving puzzles?
Right.
You know, it's those things are can absolutely be applied to your craft and your career journey.
It's
absolutely
amazing. It's amazing how many variables you put together that comprise who we are, you know, and we really have to. Yeah, no, I get it, man. It's completely on point. So my last question essentially is like, what's your mojo, man? You know, it's the title of the show, Mojo for Musicians. So what's your mojo? Like, what keeps you, you know, paradiddling your way? I don't even know if that's a word, but paradiddling your way into the hearts of Brad Paisley fans, but also the drumming community. And your answer can't be packed houses.
Oh, God, I don't even know.
Like, okay, you wake up every day, you look past the dreary-eyed countenance that you give yourself, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to do drumming another day. Like what keeps you motivated? Like your mojo on a daily basis to get
Oh,
behind
okay.
the skins.
To leave a legacy, I suppose. Um, to do. Okay, I have an answer that fits this. This
Nice.
that definitely fits this. Um, to if I'm not, again, like I said before, I'm not overwhelmed with the thoughts of just recognition and relevance and
Yeah.
things like that.
You're not an
But
accolades
in
oriented dude. I get
right,
it.
but in that quadrant, since that's where this question lies, in
Mhm.
that quadrant of thinking, my motivation is to be recognized solely on merit,
That's a good one.
not based on popularity or likes, or it just solely on, or because I promoted it or I got people to so again, when I was a kid, that's how you got success. You did it on merit. You didn't get it, you didn't have a following, you didn't
Sure.
have. I was 20 years into my career before social media came out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Literally
Yeah,
20
you've already
years.
proved yourself at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah, you had to
And
have the
that's
chops.
before that overlaps with Brad. But remember, I was in it before I met Brad for
Right.
quite a number of years. So say 20 years before social media even started.
Mhm.
And then it was another 5 years before people realized social media could be used to promote things.
Right.
So I come from a world where you got notoriety because you played really well with or in front of the right people, and you didn't have to do anything other than that.
Right.
And so that's just the mindset that I grew up with, and I'm too far gone. I understand social media and I get it. And I like the fact that I'm recognized through playing, um, or whatever I've done, solely based on those things, because I'm not hugely active on social media. I am
No,
active,
but you
but I
fly
don't.
under the radar. But you know what? And
Yeah, and
to
that's what I like. And
yeah,
so there you go. So that's what drives me, is that I'm keeping this going, and there is a legacy there, and it's based
sure.
solely on merit. And it's not, maybe it's not the largest legacy of maybe some of my peers, but it's I can 100% say that it's based on merit. And I haven't had to do the type of, for me it's painful,
Mhm.
uh over promoting. Now if I do something that I'm proud of, I'll just share it, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Or I'll be like, but the difference with me is, most people, when they're promoting something, in the back of their minds are going, well, I hope people like it. I hope this gets received. I hope. Well,
Right.
for me, if I'm posting it, it's already good. I
Right.
like it. If it's out there, I've already said, well, I think this is pretty cool, and I'm just sharing it. And if you think it's cool too, then great.
Well, that's the way it should be, though. People are so concerned about being, the reception, how we're going to
Yeah,
be treated. What's people like? Our job as artists, we're supposed to create. Let everybody else decide if they like it or not. It's not your problem, and
yeah,
and that's the way we should all be. So
yeah.
listen, you're preaching to the choir on that one, because in your defense, you don't see the Nikons and the Rolls Royces and the Bugattis advertised. They already know it's an amazing car. It's built amazing. If you have the money to afford it, then you buy it. If not, they don't
Yes,
have to
good
be posting it.
analogy.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the greats don't have to publicize. They're reliable. They've proven their skills on stage. You have
Right.
20 years of experience that uphold every single word that you're uttering right now. So listen, man, I'm right there with you, and I completely understand.
That's a good analogy. And I'm not even saying, like, the reason I default to that methodology is because that's what all my heroes did.
Right.
What does keep me going is the fact that I'm doing things on my own terms, and I'm not bashing anyone for doing things on their terms. I'm just glad that I'm able to do it
And that's
how I.
commendable, man. That really is. And I appreciate the sincerity. I appreciate the transparency and the honesty, because,
Yeah,
unfortunately, today's world is, perception is reality, and we're all so consumed with social media. Listen, granted, I use social media. This is how I run my businesses, my podcast, just
absolutely. You
advertising.
should be using it.
Right.
Yeah,
So there's a time and place for everything. But when you're good and you're content, and you feel good about what you're doing, and that's great advice for everyone who's out there. Don't worry about what people have to say about you. Just, if you're content with it and you're proud of it, post it. Do what you love in life and stop worrying. Life is so short. I just lost my dad to COVID on the 1st, and I
man, I'm
realized,
sorry.
Thanks, man. I realize the importance and the value of every second that I can walk and breathe, So there's so much nonsense in this world. But listen, wow, this is incredible. We could talk about this forever, but listen, brother, thank you so much for dropping so many thunderous bombs of knowledge, which I'm sure my listeners are going to take away and hopefully implement in their own workflows to hopefully improve their craft as well. So again, I appreciate you for that. And who knows, maybe once this drumming journey is over, we'll also find you on the sets of Gordon Ramsay's World, maybe, because I know you love the culinary arts. I know you love to cook,
or
man.
I'll own a restaurant.
There you go.
I'll definitely be doing something either in tandem with music or who knows how far ahead. Or there's definitely a food thing.
That's awesome.
In my future. Yeah,
good for you.
Sure.
Well, listen, brother, much love, much success. But before we go, I want to make sure that people are able to find you, Ben. So how do people find you on social media?
That's right. Instagram, and the handle would be @Ben Sesar. Simple.
All right. So anyone who wants to find out more about Ben Sesar and his world, please reach out to him on Instagram. Thank you so much, brother. Tell Brad we all said hi, and I appreciate you sharing all of your journeys with us, man. Totally grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Hey, man, you take care of yourself.
You too.
This has been a Mojo for Musicians podcast. If you're a musician, producer, engineer, or any other industry professional wanting to share your mojo and stories of success with our listeners, or just want to share some feedback on today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. So just send us an email at info@mannycabo.com. Thanks for listening.